delighted today on this extremely hot day, and it's 31 degrees here and 33 degrees with you. So as I say, delighted today to welcome Anita Yandell-Jones, who is the Chief Customer Officer at Ecotricity. And Anita is going to be talking, so unicorns and dark horses, diverse leadership legends, a storytelling driven podcast revealing the successes, secrets and visions of industry greats. This is podcast number 7. Yeah, I know that I've just introduced you, and I do this every time, but if you could introduce yourself in your own words, Anita, that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Certainly can. So I'm Anita. I guess I've been around in these sorts of sectors for 30 years, which is quite a long time. I'm Chief Customer Officer at Ecotricity. And I'd like to think that what I bring is a fresh approach and a look joining operations and service together from a board perspective.
Excellent, thank you for that. And Anita is joining us today to discuss what great Chief Customer Officers do differently. So let's just dive straight in with the first with the first question. So Anita, who should ultimately own the customer agenda in an organisation? The Chief Customer Officer, the CEO, or every member of the executive team, or something different?
Okay, well, I guess I'm going to refer to this in the energy sector, which is where I'm currently placed, but I guess it can be applied across all different sectors. But I think the CEO owns the customer agenda, all right, in a very, very high level way, because when things go wrong, it can become a cost, trust, regulatory issue. However, it has to be owned collectively by the exec team. All right, I think that's very, very important, because the CEO cannot be, ultimately deliver against all of these things. And I guess my role as Chief Customer Officer is to take that big picture view from our CEO and connect how the organisation works as a whole, to help understand how the decisions either impact the other teams, our profitability, our customers. And I think, therefore, my answer is, whilst the CEO is ultimately responsible and accountable, it's the exec team that have to make that a reality.
Yeah. Great, thank you. And I know the Chief Customer Officer role can be made up of various different kind of elements, but the true Chief Customer Officer is more akin to your responsibilities, whereby you have end-to-end responsibility of the customer. So, that's great. So when you look at the most successful Chief Customer Officers in your peer group, what behaviours or capabilities consistently set them apart?
So I think what sets them apart is they really understand how the organisation works end to end. They're not just focusing on a small part of the organisation. And I think that's what you were, referring to, is that having end to end. All right. Yeah, there are lots of people that might think a Chief Customer Officer just looks after service. All right, just the interaction from customers. That is not what a Chief Customer Officer does, and it's not what anybody should do that is focusing on working with customers. So I think what sets them apart is they understand beginning to end and how that translates across the business, and how all of the different teams, whether that be regulation, tech, service, whether it be legal, whether it be any of the operational stuff, how it all fits together. And I think that's the key thing that sets them apart. And I think what also sets them apart is not being focused on KPI outputs, and actually focusing on what really matters inside of the business, and actually almost looking at it as a system rather than an output of a KPI. Because actually often if anybody in these sorts of sectors focuses on their own siloed KPI, it normally causes friction or breaks somewhere else. So actually, for me, it's about joining up and weaving all of the threads through that enable somebody to pull all those threads together to deliver the right outcomes, which normally then results in the right KPIs and the right P&L performance and the right debt numbers and all of that. So I think it is, for me, very much that we don't treat it as a single journey. We treat it as pure end to end to deliver the business results for our people, for the business, and for the customers.
And I mean, just to dive a little bit deeper on that, really, because I mean, you've got kind of marketing and that, you know, all the way through that customer journey. So if you could just, it'd be really helpful if you could just explain to us, you know, your remit and how that's really helped you to be effective in the Chief Customer Officer role.
So ultimately, I'm responsible for the whole domestic energy business and the results of that. So that involves our domestic marketing teams and our sales teams through to our service, complaints, billing teams, as well as our domestic change teams, our industry and metering teams that support the domestic business and our customers around there. And then on top of that, I work very closely. Ultimately, I'm responsible for the regulation in my areas of being compliant. Now, we've got a separate regs team, but they are working very closely to deliver the vision, make sure that we're doing the right things and remaining compliant. And then I've got the collections and the debt teams. So there is nowhere in my remit that a customer does not touch, whether they're thinking about us, the way we think about our brand, what we're trying to do, the messaging we're trying to get out, whether that's for growth, engagement, or for lifetime value of customers, and just communicating along then. So with onboarding processes to offboarding when they leave us through the industry teams, but then everything in between, every bill that goes out, every industry flow, every metering issue, and every service or complaints issue that comes from billing or metering or onboarding, all of that. So it helps me understand where things can go wrong when I'm designing and I'm having conversations with teams. A prime example of that would be our home move process. Prime example, most people think, okay, it's a sales opportunity. So somebody's moving into a property, great, you can get a new customer, and also the customer that's moving can take you with them. All right. The amount of teams that involves is quite large. And actually, 68% of energy debt in the sector, across all sector, all the energy sectors, is linked to home moves. So actually, if you're just focusing it from a sales perspective, you are not addressing the fact that we don't get told that people are moving into the property, that they're not engaging, we're not being told of people's names. And actually, it's like joining up the journey so that you're saying to your marketing team, when somebody moves in, how do we engage, get that customer to want to engage with us so we get their names? We can start to get the billing set up so we're not rebilling the wrong people. How do we get customers to tell us when they're moving? Which means from a service point of view, you're designing the journeys to make that easy for the agents and for customers. That in long term means we're not then putting customers through collections processes, debt processes, sending out to debt collection agencies, going down involuntary prepayment meter routes, all of that. By designing that one journey properly, you're ticking all of the boxes. And I think that's the key. Prior to me taking over this role, they were seen as separate functions. And so the debt collections are dealing with customers over here, but not joining it up to being a home move problem. The service team were just treating it transactionally, not knowing what the debt teams were experiencing, needing, and our marketing team was seeing it as a growth opportunity. Does that make sense? So it's about, for me, joining that up. And that's where I think having end-to-end really helps.
And so it's more than a bird's eye vision, really. It's kind of it's that whole kind of 360 peripheral vision from a real height. I mean, what you've just described there in real detail, I mean, that ultimately is such a small facet of the entire journey, but such great opportunity. So I mean, you have to have, as I say, such a huge broad vision to be able to carry out your role effectively. And I just wonder, because you have got quite a commercial beginning to your career. So I mean, you started ultimately your career in sales before moving into kind of operating model transformation, and then into service and broader ops. So do you think that has helped you in your current role?
I think there's lots of things that help. So I'm actually a nurse. I'm a qualified nurse, right? So I think fundamentally, when I look back, I sometimes, reflect on my career, and actually nursing helps you learn to look for things that somebody isn't telling you. All right. So as a nurse, you're taught to smell, you're taught to
Wow,
listen, you're taught to look. All right. And I know that sounds really silly, but it's the things that the
brilliant.
patient doesn't say that you are
Yeah.
learning. So I think I then went into sales, into telesales. And I think you're listening. I think my nursing taught me to listen to verbal cues in a different way and things customers were saying. And this is back in the early 90s now. So, yeah, you're very driven by that. But I think I was very successful in having good sales conversions that didn't churn because I listened to the customer and understood what they wanted and matched the needs to that. And I think then driving through my career and obviously rising up the leadership ladder and going into service, I think those principles still stand. It's always easy to find the low-hanging fruit, right? It's always easy to address those things, but you've got to look for the things that aren't easy or the things that aren't obvious, because actually it's those things that will make the difference. When I was running 111, we used to talk about, and it's very much that systems thinking sort of approach, which is, when a doctor prescribes, they're treating the symptoms, not the cause. And for me, it's always about find the cause. Don't treat the symptom, treat the cause. So actually, that's where I think it all weaves in. I think my career's led me to that. I think I've been very, very fortunate to be with some great organisations, given some great opportunities, learned from some great people, not just people I work with, but in the industry through different forums, and you can share and learn from, but then to surround myself with the very best people. Because actually, I can only achieve if the teams that I'm working with and the people I'm working with also believe that. And I think that's always the biggest challenge is when you move different organizations, the cultural shift that you want people to go on with you. Because actually it might be the first time, which always surprises me, that they're thinking like this and giving them the bandwidth and the thinking time to do that whilst you're still trying to move at pace and deliver.
It's amazing what kind of, I mean, once you get to senior leadership level, obviously it's not a sausage machine exercise. I mean, you're so unique in what makes you you. And I find it absolutely fascinating, the different kind of elements that senior leaders have that make them the unique leader that they are today. But I always think as well, when we're looking at big transformation roles, my last placement actually is a key example of this as well. Is sales is not necessarily just all about selling a product or a service and getting revenue. And I think that when we're looking at senior transformation leaders, having that sales experience is really, really valuable because you're able to sell stories and sell your ideas effectively to people.
I think having marketing has helped me as well. I think that's probably the newest thing I absorbed. Well, one of the newer things I absorbed, and actually learning about personas and really understanding how different customers, want different things, and understanding how you position yourself to support them, not just from a growth perspective, but from a service and a lifetime value perspective. And I guess that's where it then ties back into the nursing. Do you know what I mean? It's all about that. You can't have one size does not fit all. So actually, when, I'd like to think of myself as an architect almost, right? I'm helping teams understand how they fit together to deliver what we need. And actually, you cannot sheep-dip customers. You can design a process or a journey, but actually that journey is not going to suit every different customer. So you need to think about those really unique things that are not the happy path for each customer type, and actually try and design something that is either flexible enough to move with you or allows those customers to feel that you've designed it for them, even though they're all different and unique. I think, you're right. Having sales experience helps you with that because you know how to talk and listen to people. Whether that be your own people, which is really important, or customers, but actually tying that together and helping the tech team to understand, you're selling to the tech team. You are selling. My job is to sell my vision to the tech team about why this piece of work is so important and needs to be done in the right way, and helping engineers that are very, code-driven, task-driven, very skilled at what they do, but they are so far removed from what it is trying to achieve. It's trying to take all of those people on the journey. And I think, going back to it, that's what CCOs do well. That is our job. We are people. We're there with a commercial brain and a commercial thought process to help everybody else come to life in the organisation and work together.
Engineering leadership, another extremely interesting topic, but we won't visit there today because this is all about the Chief Customer Officer. So yeah, I mean, it's, and I don't want to derail the podcast, but if we've got time at the end, then I'll revisit the question. It was about kind of the regulation piece. But anyway, the next question is, if an organisation genuinely puts customers at the centre of every decision, should it even need a Chief Customer Officer? Don't want to do you out of a job here.
No, it's fine. And I would say in theory, no. Right? An organisation shouldn't need one. But in reality, that doesn't happen. Do you know what I mean? Yes, it does need it. And I think that's because organisations are quite complex, all right? And they're shaped around sort of systems, regulation, KPIs, rather than journeys. I think if an organisation moves into that space, and this might take me out of a job, right? Because this is the space we're in, you wouldn't necessarily need them. But I think the reason organisations need us is that we bring that big picture perspective and help the organisation work in a connected system. I think that is the thing. I think it's where it's a real challenge because priorities will change, pace will change. And what becomes a focus for another organisation without you reminding them constantly of the impact and being involved in every sort of conversation around change around the business and where it's heading, it can do more damage to the good work that's been done. So I think that is why that role is the advocate, to keep everything connected and working. Like an example of that would be AI. AI is being driven very heavily from tech in most organisations now. Do you know what I mean? Because obviously CEO remit, we need to drive efficiencies and different things, but actually tech deployment of AI can focus it on the wrong things. All right. And where I see organisations using AI and where they're trying to focus is at the front end. All right. And where they're overlaying AI is over broken processes. All right. Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't want AI to work your broken processes that are causing more friction, because it's going to frustrate a customer even more, because actually it can't resolve the issue. It's just smoothing over and often ends up being passed to an agent. All right. So for me, it's about saying to tech, that's great. Where can we deploy AI? And looking at the more back office processes that cause the contact in the first place. So I think a CCO is needed to have those conversations, because I think tech would go, we can do it over here. I'm not suggesting that's what my tech team do, but where it will start is, we can put a chatbot in. I don't need a chatbot, thank you very much. Do you know what I mean? What I need is not that contact from the customer in the first place. Or if the customer's going to contact me, somebody that can speak to them, help them and resolve the issue or stop it happening in the first place.
Yeah.
And I think that's where my role is critical, as opposed to, a CTO role might be there, or somebody, or a CEO, but it's pulling all the threads and going, if I put AI in the right place and we do it right across the organisation, all of our KPIs will met, we'll get AI, it will deliver the efficiencies we need, but it will stop the customer friction in the first place.
Yeah. It's a great example, and actually now the question that I was just talking about becomes even more appropriate, because actually the need for a chief customer officer. So you have worked in heavily regulated industries, financial services, healthcare, and now the energy sector, which, you know, is well publicised for having many, many different challenges around kind of the regulation piece, not least with the vulnerable customers. So how kind of helpful is it to that sort of segment, you know, well, regulation in general, but then that segment of customers, the vulnerable customers, to have a chief customer officer present within an organisation?
It's really important. So in our organisation, I am the vulnerability champion. That's what we would call me. All right. So I am there to almost be the mirror that is held up to everything we do around our customers from a vulnerability point of view, whether that's on the priority service register, and not just accept that we have vulnerable customers, but to challenge the way that we interact or what we do to customers. But also, I think it's probably, at the moment, I am challenging Ofgem around vulnerability. All right. And the heavy regulation they've got and the guardrails that have been put on and the frustration and the impact that is causing to the sector in the things that they do. So I think it's about, the chief customer officer around that sort of thing will say, right, we need to make sure we're doing the right things. We need to make sure our people understand that and challenge our own thoughts, processes, designs around that to make sure we're doing the right thing. But at the same time, not just accept that vulnerability is a reason not to pay your bill. All right, and design a journey that says, so where we are at the moment in my thinking and my challenges, we have a lot of customers. So it's very interesting in the energy sector, actually, because it's self-disclosure of vulnerabilities. So the energy sector has no joined up data sharing with the NHS, with DWP and everything. So a customer might say to you they're vulnerable or might give you a reason they're vulnerable. So let's just think of an example. An example of them being vulnerable is that they're pregnant. All right, or they've got children under 2 under Ofgem regulation. Now, that does not mean that they can't pay their bills. What it means is if their energy was to go off supply, it could cause more impact. But actually, it's then designing the journeys and having the conversations with our debt and our collections teams and our service teams that might in the past have been scared of the regulation and gone, oh no, we can't do this to that customer because they're vulnerable and they're on the PSR register, so we can't chase them for debt. And it's challenging that, but also challenging Ofgem and what that means. But at the same time, empowering the people and making the business decisions that say every case has got to be treated on an individual basis, but this is the framework we're going to work within. I think that's really important because somebody needs to think about it end to end. The more you grow, the more you are exposing yourself to vulnerable customers and debt if you take that approach. So you're achieving your growth targets, but sinking your debt. It's getting worse. So you've got to have a really pragmatic strategy and vision for what all that means.
What a powerful example of how you tie the customer to commercial. You've just given that in such a clever way, bringing the vulnerable customers into the picture as well. That's brilliant, Anita. That for me encapsulates what the chief customer officer needs to do. Obviously, there is that focus, that laser focus on the customer, but then we need to be real about this, and this is business after all. I mean that's absolutely smashed that brilliant, Anita. So let's not going to gush too much. Let's move on to the last question. How do the best chief customer officers balance customer advocacy with commercial realities when those priorities appear to conflict? So I guess that we've just kind of gone through that, but that was a question that we'd agreed on. So, and I know you'll have extra thoughts around that. So
I think it's fair to say I don't see customer and commercials as being a conflict. All right, it's one thing. All right. And I think that's the real balance you've got to do. But what I do is I see tension between them. Do you know what I mean? Because constantly one is pulling in the direction you're trying to do it. I think for me, the biggest thing is not to focus on KPIs. All right, I think that is where, for me, it becomes a commercial reality. So I've seen many organisations chase short-term KPIs that will deliver immediate P&L benefit. All right. And that could be like going, we've got to get all of our bills out the door. All right, we'll get all the bills out the door. Doesn't necessarily mean they're accurate, right? But it means that we're ticking a box over here. But if we've not addressed the root cause of those bills going out the door and addressing it, what it does, all right, it will literally increase my out-of-term debt. It's going to increase more contact, more rebilling, more rework for almost, all of the support functions, the debt team, but also our finance team. All right, that are then doing the reforecasting and the cash flows. They're taking a stance, and then the next day it's rebuild, which changes the outcome of that. So I think it's to my job is to step back, take in that systems view, help everybody to understand it. And therefore, I'm not just looking to hit my contact reduction target. I'm not just trying to achieve over here. I'm not risk deflecting. I'm just trying to manage the whole thing as a system. All right. And I think by that way, I am balancing customer advocacy with the commercial, because actually by focusing on all these different things, I'm not just chasing one target. I'm trying to tick a box in every area of the business with everything we do and getting our teams to see that. So I think it's easy to balance it because they are the same thing. There's just friction. And you've got to work out where that friction is and how best to resolve it quickly to make sure that you're achieving your commercial results, but also that the customer is getting the best service, which is going to deliver your lifetime value, which then helps the commercial. Short-term fixes, focusing on KPIs is not the right thing to do. It's just a number in a box that somebody can measure today. And tomorrow that number will change. And you can't just do rinse and repeat, because it will not drive what you're trying to look for unless you're designing the right real KPIs. But you cannot then go, this is a KPI for debt, this is a KPI for service. It's got to be, they all feed. So it's really, really, really difficult to do that. So I think I balance it very well. I think it's really easy. I think I'm very fortunate that I've got great people around me that understand that, and they understand how all those targets join together. So our leadership team meeting, we spend a lot of time talking about the journeys, and the call centre might have had a really quick speed of answer, but if the quality score isn't right, that's going to impact the debt position, because actually we've not addressed the first contact resolution. If my sales team and my marketing team have generated so many sales, we haven't got the industry flows right in our industry teams and our metering teams, and these customers don't onboard, cost to serve goes through the roof. So I think it's just about getting everybody to see the journey. Do you know what I mean? And balancing it so that what we're trying to achieve is a seamless service for our people, for customers, and ultimately that will just deliver the result. And it makes it sound really simple, and clearly in reality it's not, but it is that big picture. It is just the threads. I've got a little needle. I just sew them all together and just keep pulling.
Yeah, pulling all the leaves. I mean, we obviously go way back anyway, Anita, and I know you very well. I mean, I placed you at Ecotricity many years ago, but it seems it seems to me that one of the most important traits actually of a chief customer officer, and definitely how you're coming across in this podcast, is being brave and the ability to stand up for stuff and get things done. What would you say to that, to tie up the podcast?
I would say as well, it's about balancing. I remember when I joined Ecotricity, do you know what I mean? We were just coming out of COVID. There was a lot of backlogs, lots of things like the whole energy sector, people working from home, people were off ill all the time, customers couldn't pay their bills. There was the whole nation or the whole world was in a difficult place. And I think it's really important. I remember getting a remit of being told you need to fix this. And actually, and also being given a time scale to do it, which was not unreasonable of an ask of somebody of my level, but actually being brave enough to say, no, I cannot fix it in that time scale. Actually, I can give you some KPI wins, But what it's going to do is just going to burn it down and come back. Actually, I think the way we need to approach it is this, and actually really go through true organisational change and drive it. And I think it is about being brave, right? Because, it's quite difficult when you're not going to be delivering, and it's going to be very hard for them to see the impact you're having, because it's not going to come for 2-3 years. And I think that's the thing. It's about being able to hold your nerve, find the small things that can show them we're on our way without them going, oh my God, all this is still burning. Because you know what? Unfortunately, things need to burn to fix them. And that's quite hard when you're balancing the commercial with customers and people, because you're asking your people to change. You're asking customers to bear with you because you can't get it fixed straight away. And you're asking, the business to invest, hold steady, because it's coming, and it's like the field of dreams, build it and they will come, right? You have to build it and hope that it all works. And you have to have confidence in that, but you also have to go, I've got this bit wrong, because we are not perfect people, right? Businesses are not perfect. Our people aren't perfect. Our customers are not perfect. And sometimes things don't work the way you think they're going to. And for me, it's about being able to adapt to that, listening. It goes back to that listening thing, listening to people, listening to your teams, listening to customers, and not just treating them as a KPI. Like you've got to want to care. So maybe actually going back to your earlier question, what do successful CCOs do? They care. It's not just a job, right? It's a passion. I guess that's what I feel, right? I'm really passionate about pulling all that together and doing that and doing it well for everybody involved, because it makes a great organisation. It makes great teams, but people want to come to work, feel fulfilled in their jobs, but it makes customers want to be with you and stay with you. So there you go. Nice and simple.
Nice and simple, eh? That was amazing, Anita. Thank you for joining me to talk through what great chief customer officers do differently. I think you have covered everything off really, really well, to be fair. And your passion definitely comes across. So, sincerely thank you for joining me today. It's much appreciated.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure.